Yo, what's up? It's Q and Terry. You're not watching WTF, also known as What's the Future with Q and Terry. One of the things that I do every single day is I ask myself, what's the future? And I take those notes and I store them in a journal. You can find that journal at everydays.wtf. I'm actually on the road today, so we're going to have a little bit of a different episode. There was recently, I guess, yes, as of like about 24 hours ago, there was a conversation between I feel like I'm gonna mess these names up a little bit, so I'm just gonna put that precursor out there now. I'm doing my best, but I hope these guys don't kill me.
We'll put them on the screen for a
Eliezer
second.
yeah. You got it. Eliezer Yudkowsky, and you've got George Hotz. Now, I know these guys for different reasons, right? One, I don't really ever use their full names. For George, I always refer to him as Geo Hotz because that's the most famous hacker name that he is known by. This guy is known for everything from iOS jailbreaks, like on the early days. If you remember, like what it meant to jailbreak an iPod Touch, um, George Hotz or Geo Hotz was one of the people behind that. He was also behind a lot of the early like PlayStation 3 jailbreaks, so taking the PlayStation, turning it into a computer. And then I think a lot of people are familiar with his work around cars, most notably jailbreaking Teslas and things of that nature. So very prominent like technologist, programmer, hacker, big figure in the space. Eliezer is nobody to snuff at either. This guy is known for coining the term of friendly AI. Also a pretty prominent writer. And if you're into like mental models and things of that nature, you can find a lot of his work because he was the founder of lesswrong.com. That's a very prominent website if you want to learn more about decision making and what rationale looks like. And these are important backstories to note because, they have this debate, and you can argue that this was like this super debate of sorts because you have like both of them acknowledging the potential dangers of AI and how it might interact with the world. Now, I brought Mike on with me because was a very dense conversation. It was about almost 2 hours, and they covered a ton of things. So, what I want to do is just give like a quick, like, let's just take 10-15 minutes and just break down, what we found interesting in this conversation. Mike's going to ask some questions. I've got some notes, and then I'll go ahead and actually write up my true summary of some of the points that I liked in this article in the today's everyday's notes, which would be 255, I believe. So we're getting up there.
Yeah, so I guess just starting off like the conversation is a little bit of a different episode, different notes version and audio note version in the sense of conversation versus more like kind of scripted or planned. So we're going off the cuff here. Like what was one of your biggest impressions upon listening to that whole conversation? Just like one singular takeaway.
I don't know if I have one. I mean, it was 2 hours, right? So it was really impossible to say
No,
like
I
one
know.
singular
We're gonna
takeaway.
get into
I
more
mean,
details. I
if
was
if
like,
I if yeah, if I had to just do one singular takeaway, it's that, man. I mean, this is a tough question. I think the singular takeaway here is just how grandiose AI has become in our global landscape. Like that was the totality of this conversation. It's like everything they were thinking about was not so minuscule where it was just an organization, which is oftentimes how you see AI portrayed. It wasn't even so minuscule where it was just like, a whole industry, which is also where we always see AI oftentimes portrayed as. Like when you see generative AI, you're always seeing generative AI as it's displayed in like a creative field or creative element. You never really see it as its whole totality on the world. And I think that George and Eli did a really good job of just keeping it as broad as they possibly could.
so I think your answer to the question communicates a lot in the sense that it's a very, very complex issue and it's issues and there's a lot of nuance and a lot to think through. You're someone who, I mean, spends so much time learning this stuff and thinking about this stuff and diving in, what were any like new takeaways you had or new thoughts that came to mind as you were listening to that conversation?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot. I'm just gonna spitfire here. So, the first point was the efficiency of AI. You know, Hotz questioned Yudkowsky's assertion that AI is incredibly inefficient. He maintained that, like, if AI is inefficient, then what might it be? And Yudkowsky maintained that, like, AI, like humans, using vast amounts of, like, compute power for simple tasks such as multiplication, which he sees as evidence of inefficiency. Hotz, however, was make very adamant in his arguments that, you know this is exactly how humans operate, implying that this might not be a valid measure of inefficiency. So you get it. It's like you can't use the scale that you would use to measure a human for as you would a computer. And I thought the whole efficiency of AI scale is a very interesting conundrum and something to, like, just to take heed of, right? Because I mean, all of these things are going to require new baselines and new methods of measurement, and that was one of them. The thing that I think scared both of them was AI's potential for domination, right? Yudkowsky expressed a lot of concerns that AI could outcompete humans in domination, which he saw as like a potential danger. Hotz, however, seemed to downplay this concern, and he suggested that, like, Yudkowsky is afraid of a constant struggle of domination. And I thought that, like, this is like the ebbs and flow of life, right? Like every powerful being, every dictator, every ruler, every king, like the storyline is they want power, they want control. And so we're making this assumption that AI is going to want power, want control. And that was even a very large through line in the latest Mission Impossible. I forgot the title of the movie, but I think it's like Mission Impossible 7. But like the whole premise of the movie is like there's an AI that wants to take over the world and attack everything, and, like, Ethan Hunt and his team, they have to stop it. My my theory here is, like, is that a human thing, or do we have real stark signs that AI can be used for world domination? I mean, obviously, there's some malicious things that you can do, but the thing that keeps me safe and just allows me to go to sleep at night, just personally, is AI is only as good as the human you put beneath it or put behind it. And what I mean by that is, like, none of these systems are running on their own. There's always a human that initiates, like, the agent, and then the agent goes and does whatever said output is. In this case, like, we can probably prevent that if we just say, here are some safeguards, and humans, we have to be smart about it. We've seen that work with, like, nuclear weapons, right? Like, largely, you don't hear about a lot of calamities that have ensued on the nuclear front because of some of the smarts that we as humans have put in place, and some of the discernment and control that we have in that realm. But, like, I don't think AI will be much different once it gets to that level. Like, I think that we're just gonna have to accept that, like, humans are going to be the initiator of this world domination from the AI front. At least that's just how I see it today.
Yeah, no, those are great thoughts, and I mean, there's so much to unpack in all the different angles and the stakeholders when it comes to AI and how it's going to impact things downstream, and like there's more stuff that's going to evolve and come to light that we're not even aware of yet because it's 10 years down the line. I guess like
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 more.
reflecting on that conversation and just like thinking in the future, what are like the biggest questions in your mind as we move forward with relation to this topic?
Yeah, so 2 questions, right? The first question would be, you know, they brought up this whole concept of AI's potential for cooperation versus conflict. And Yudkowsky argued that, like, AI would be motivated to cooperate rather than fight. And fighting would just basically lead to this whole concept of wasteful use of resources. And if you have an AI that is perfect, it's going to always use the 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 least amount of resources for the job. Whereas Hotz, on the other hand, suggested that like AIs might gang up and take resources from a weaker AI, implying a potential for conflict. I think that this cooperation versus conflict narrative is very it's very it's not absurd, but it's like very, very, very it's out there, man. It's out there because like when you think about this stuff like AI as it exists, we don't even know if we've gotten to AGI, right? Like there's a case to be made that this has happened, and there's a case that to be made that like this still has yet to happen, and maybe we're 10 to 13 years away from that. I mean, once we get to artificial general intelligence and we have a AI that we all can say is somewhat cognizant of the world around it, and like we all agree based on certain parameters or factors, then I think we can start to wonder if the AI will be cooperate or have conflict. Obviously you want to start thinking about those safety standards now before you get to that point, because you might not be able to control said system. But I mean, so much of this feels like science, speculative science fiction, that it is kind of hard for your average individual to follow through. The one thing that wasn't hard for anyone to follow along with is when they got to the point where they were talking about the speed of AI development. Now, Hotz refers to Yudkowsky's earlier views on the speed of AI development, and he suggested that Yudkowsky had once believed in rapid acceleration of AI capabilities due to Moore's law. However, that isn't exactly the case as we're seeing, because even if the AI were to rapidly expand right now, there's so many drawbacks, everything from hallucinations to it's just not enough parameters to recall from a memory perspective. So it's like the AI has like the brain of a bumblebee at this point, because it just can only hold so much context. And so you have a lot of hacks in order to get around that, but that is hindering its development and its evolution. However, what's not being slowed down at all is the development of these models and the speed at which they're being released. However, that will probably lead to some type of resource war in the future, because there's limited amount of resources for these models to be ran on. I mean, there's only one company that's providing the majority of the graphics cards for this industry, and that's Nvidia. They can't supply everybody, so it's going to be constrained. They're going to find some heads being bumped and butted. And even in this great debate of like nerds going at it, we still didn't really see, like, we still didn't get anywhere. Like, I mean, there was no like there were no immediate takeaways. So my whole point was, you know it, we're here, but the super intelligent question of do we have AI that might surpass human intelligence, again, feels like fodder for a sci-fi novel, and not something that is too actionable for us to take in today.
Yeah. I mean, this certainly is not a closed conversation, but kind of hit on some closing thoughts there. But for this immediate moment, any parting words as we wrap up this episode of WTF?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're going to watch this debate, watch it with the perspective that this is going to provide you a fascinating insight into the potential future of AI and implications for humanity. I don't think that anybody will agree on all of these points, and I think this debate did a great job of showing what it looks like to agree and what it looks like to disagree. However, I think the discussion at hand, especially at the people with the people that were brought to the table, highlights the importance of ongoing dialogue, especially in times of need like right now.
Q, next time I want you in that debate because you bring a wealth of knowledge and level-headed perspective to a complex topic.
I'll see what I can do. Thanks.
Do you want to take us home, or do you want me to take us home